Hello everyone. This video is about histology of connective tissue. Here I am going to explain about components of connective tissue, classification of connective tissue, microscopic identification of areolar connective tissue, adipose connective tissue, dense connective tissue, and at the end also explain about our basic tissues of our body are epithelial tissue, muscular tissue, nervous tissue and connective tissue. So introduction about connective tissue. It is a term applied to tissues which provide general structure, mechanical strength, space filling, physical and metabolic support for more specialized tissues. Connective tissue is one of the most abundant and widely distributed tissues in the body. It is present in almost every part of the body. It is conspicuous in some regions and scanty in others. They are mesodermal in origin. Functions of connective tissue. It plays several essential roles. The first one is the structural role. So it holds together structures such as skin, muscles, blood vessels and etc. It binds together various layers of hollow organs. It forms a framework that supports the cellular elements of various organs such as spleen, lymph node, glands and provides capsules for them. The looseness of areolar tissue facilitates movement between structures connected by it. The looseness of superficial fascia enables the movement of skin over the deep fascia. In hollow organs, this allows for mobility and stretching. It acts as medium for exchange of nutrients and wastes between the blood and tissues. Next role is the defensive role. With that, it protects against microorganisms and it repairs the damaged tissues and it stores the fat. So now coming to components of connective tissue. The components of connective tissue is divided into cells, fibers and intercellular ground substance. Under the cells, it is grouped as intrinsic cells, extrinsic cells. The fibers of connective tissue are collagen fibers, reticular fibers and elastic fibers. Let's have a discussion on cells of connective tissue. Cells are the important components of the connective tissue. It is classified under two groups. First group known as that resident cells are intrinsic component. They are responsible for production and maintenance of extracellular matrix. They are fibroblasts, pigment cells, adipocytes, undifferentiated mesenchymal cells, fixed macrophages, mast cells. Second group known as wandering or fluctuating or migrating cells, also known as extrinsic cells. They bring out tissue reactions to injuries. They are free macrophages, lymphocytes, neutrophils, basophils, eosinophils, plasma cells and monocytes. So the components, under the components, fibroblasts are the important cells. They are called fibroblasts because they are concerned with the production of fibers and production of ground substance. In tissue sections, the cells appears as a spindle shaped and the nucleus appears to be flat. When seen from the surface, the cells show branching process. Fibroblasts become very active when there is a need to lay down collagen fibers. For example, during wound repair, where they form the granulation tissue with budding capillaries. During that time, this becomes very active. And myofibroblasts are the features of the fibroblasts and smooth muscle. They are elongated spindle-shaped cells with the bundles of actin filaments. They help in the wound contraction. Next cells are the pigment cells. They are most abundant in the connective tissue of the skin and in the choroid of the iris of the eyeball. And the pigment cells are easily distinguished as they contain brown pigment known as melanin in their cytoplasm. So they are called melanocytes. Pigment cells in the skin protect the deeper tissues from the effects of the light. Albinism is a condition where there is a complete absence of melanin pigment. So these are the points, important points about the pigment cells. Next are the adipocytes. These known as that fat storing cells, and the aggregation of these cells constitute adipose tissue. Each fat cell contains a large droplets of fat which almost fills and result that it becomes round. The nucleus is pushed against the plasma membrane and it is flat. In routine slide preparation, fat dissolved by organic solvent that giving the adipocytes. So they are found deep to the skin and also around the organs such as heart, kidneys and abdomen. So you can see this image, it is abdomen, there you can see abundant fat. Next are the macrophages. Macrophages, as name it is telling, macro means large, phages means eaters. So these cells are connective tissue are so called because in the histiocytes are plasmatocytes. These develop from monocytes and which migrates from the blood. The nuclei of macrophages are small, heterochromatic and stain more intensely, and they are kidney shaped. Macrophage cells of connective tissue belong to mononuclear phagocyte system, and they have the ability to phagocytose, that is eat up unwanted material, both organic and inorganic. Macrophages are usually described as fixed when they are attached to fibers. These fixed macrophages reside in a particular tissue. Example, alveolar macrophages in the lungs, splenic macrophages in the spleen. Then whereas wandering macrophages have the ability to move throughout the tissue and gather the sites of infection or inflammation to carry on phagocytosis. Next are the mast cells. These are large round or oval cells. Their nucleus is small and centrally placed. They are most frequently seen around the blood vessels and nerves. They produce the histamine, and that is a chemical that dilates the small blood vessels as part of the inflammatory response, the body's reaction to injury or infection. Brain and spinal cord are devoid of the mast cells, thus they are protected from harmful effects of edema and allergic reactions. Next are the plasma cells. These are the small cells that develop from the type of WBC called B lymphocytes. They produce antibodies that may be discharged locally, may enter the circulation, or may be stored within the cell itself in the form of inclusions called Russell's bodies. Thus, plasma cells are important part of the body's immune response. Most plasma cells reside in connective tissue, especially in the GIT respiratory tract. They are also abundant in the salivary glands, lymph nodes, spleen and red bone marrow. And nucleus is spherical and eccentric. The chromatin in its nucleus form 4 or 5 clumps near the periphery, thus giving the nucleus a resemblance to a cartwheel appearance. Next are the leukocytes known as the WBC. They are not found in significant number in normal connective tissue. However, in response to certain conditions, they migrate from blood to connective tissue. Example, the neutrophils gather the sites of infection. Eosinophils migrate to sites of parasitic invasions and allergic responses. So those are about that cell components in the connective tissue. Now coming to fibers of the connective tissue, there are three. This function is to strengthen and support the connective tissue. They are collagen fibers, elastic fibers and reticular fibers. About the collagen fibers, collagen is the most abundant protein in the human body, and collagen fibers plays a vital role in maintaining the tissue structure, strength and elasticity. So this is the image. These collagen fibers appear as the bundles. There are 4 types of collagen fibers are present: type 1, type 2, type 3, type 4. In the skin, bones, tendons and ligaments, type 1 present. Cartilage, particularly joints, type 2 present. Blood vessels, muscles and organs type 3 present. And type 4 forms the basement membrane, a thin layer separating the epithelial cells from underlying tissues. So this is a slide of the tendon where you can see that collagen fibers bundles. Next, coming to elastic fibers, these provide elasticity and flexibility to various tissues and organs in the human body. They composed of the protein elastin, and the elastic fibers are found in skin to maintain the elasticity and firmness. In the lungs, these enable lungs to expand and recoil during breathing. In the blood vessels, they help to maintain blood vessels elasticity and blood pressure regulation. In the tendons and ligaments, these fibers provide flexibility and elasticity to these connective tissues. In the intestines, these fibers help to maintain the shape and structure of the intestines. And these are located as a singly branch and anastomose each other. It's not like bundles. So functions of these elastic fibers are elasticity, so that it allows tissues to stretch and recoil, maintaining their original shape, and flexibility. It provides flexibility to tissues, enabling them to move and bend, and it gives support to tissues, maintain their structure and organization. So overall, in general, elastic fibers play a vital role in maintaining the tissue elasticity, flexibility and structure, and their degradation or dysfunction can lead to various diseases and disorders. Next, third fibers are the reticular fibers. These are the type of connective tissue fiber composed of collagen and glycoprotein, especially type 3 collagen. And these fibers form a fine mesh-like network that supports the structure of soft tissues and organs. And they are particularly important in providing support in areas requiring flexibility and strength. Reticular fibers functions are, it forms the framework of various organs like lymph nodes, spleen and bone marrow, and supports the soft tissue such as liver and adipose tissue, and it provides a scaffold for cells, particularly in hematopoietic and lymphatic tissues. So next, third component is the ground substance. The ground substance is the component of connective tissue. It present between cells and fibers. The ground substance may be fluid, semi-fluid, gelatinous or calcified. It supports the cells and binds them together, and it stores the water and provides a medium for exchange of substances between blood and cells. It plays a vital role in how tissues develop, migrate, proliferate and change shape, and how they carry out their metabolic functions. So composition of this ground substance, it contains water, polysaccharides and proteins. Polysaccharides of the connective tissue called glycosaminoglycans. Glycosaminoglycans include number 1 important hyaluronic acid. It is a viscous slippery substance that binds cells together and lubricates the joints and helps maintain the shape of the eyeballs. And in the WBC, sperm cells and some bacteria produce hyaluronidase, an enzyme, and that breaks the apart hyaluronic acid, thus causing a ground substance of connective tissue to become more liquid. And this ability to produce hyaluronidase helps in the WBC to move more easily through connective tissue to reach the sites of infection, whereas in the oocyte, this aids penetration of oocyte by sperm cell during fertilization, and also accounts for the rapid spread of bacteria through connective tissue. And ground substance also contain glycosaminoglycans. Other component is the chondroitin sulfate and dermatin sulfate, keratin sulfate. So keratin sulfate present in bone, cartilage and cornea of the eye, whereas dermatin sulfate, the skin, tendons, blood vessels and heart valves, whereas chondroitin sulfate provides support and adhesiveness in cartilage, bone, skin and blood vessels. So other component is the proteoglycans. They form a core protein. Except for hyaluronic acid, the glycosaminoglycans are associated with proteins called proteoglycans. One of the most important properties of this glycosaminoglycans is that they trap water, making the ground substance more jelly-like. So summary of this connective tissue of components. These are three types of components are present: cells, fibers, and intercellular matrix or ground substance. Cells are grouped as intrinsic, extrinsic. Intrinsic cells are the fibroblasts, pigment cells, adipocytes, undifferentiated mesenchymal cells, fixed macrophages, and mast cells. Extrinsic cells are the free macrophages, lymphocytes, neutrophils, basophils, eosinophils, plasma cells, monocytes. The fibers are the collagen fibers, reticular fibers, and elastic fibers. Now coming to classification of connective tissue. Connective tissue is classified into connective tissue proper and specialized connective tissue. Connective tissue proper is two types. One is in embryonic connective tissue. In that mesenchyme, mucous connective tissue are present. In the adult connective tissue, number one is the loose connective tissue, also known as areolar tissue. Number two is the dense connective tissue. Dense are divided into dense regular and dense irregular. Whereas specialized connective tissue is cartilage, bone, blood, and adipose tissue. Now coming to embryonic connective tissue. It is mesoderm gives rise to embryonic connective tissue. There are two types present. Number one is the mesenchyme. It is found in embryo. It consists of mesenchymal cells. Number two is the mucous connective tissue. It present in the umbilical cord. And so first one, mesenchyme connective tissue. It has irregularly shaped mesenchymal cells embedded in semi-fluid ground substance, and that contains delicate reticular fibers. So this is the image of this mesenchyme where you can see the reticular fibers, and it almost exclusively present under the skin and along the developing bones of the embryo, and some in adult connective tissue, especially along the blood vessels. And its function is it forms almost all other types of connective tissue. Next is the mucous connective tissue. It has widely scattered fibroblasts embedded in viscous jelly-like ground substance, and that contains fine collagen fibers. So here in this image you can see that collagen fibers, and this is that present in the umbilical cord of the fetus. It helps in the support. So next is the loose connective tissue, also known as areolar connective tissue, and it is one of the most widely distributed connective tissue, and it is so called because it is loosely arranged fibers, all three fibers but loosely arranged. In it encloses the small spaces which are filled with the interstitial fluid, and it contains several kinds of cells like fibroblasts, macrophages, plasma cells, adipocytes, mast cells, and few WBC also. And these cells are embedded in semi-fluid ground substance, that is hyaluronic acid, chondroitin sulfate, dermatin sulfate, and keratin sulfate. And loose areolar tissue, it contains cells, fibers, extracellular matrix. So this is the slide of a loose connective tissue, and where you can see that number of cells and bundles of collagen fibers, and also you can see that elastic fibers, reticular fibers. So this loose connective tissue present in endomysium, subperiosteal tissue, lamina propria of the GIT, hypodermis, stroma of the glands, and mesentery. Its main function is to bind the different tissues together. So next connective tissue is the dense. So this connective tissue is adapted to offer resistance and protection. So it has the same components present in the loose connective tissue, that is cells, fibers, and ground substance. But in this connective tissue, few cells present and a clear predominant of the collagen fibers over the ground substance present. And dense connective tissue is less flexible and far more resistant to stress than in loose connective tissue. So it is divided into dense irregular connective tissue. Number 2 is the dense regular connective tissue. Dense irregular connective tissue we can see in the dermis, connective tissue sheets of the muscles, nerves, capsules of the glands, sclera, periosteum and adventitia of the blood vessels. Whereas dense regular connective tissue we can see under the tendon of the muscles, ligaments of the joint, deep fascia, intermuscular septum, aponeurosis, central tendon of the diaphragm, the fibrous pericardium and dura mater. So we can see that dense regular connective tissue slide. Here you can observe that bundles of the collagen fibers are present. So collagen fibers are bundled, they are arranged in the bundles. And nuclei of some cells, so that is mainly fibroblasts are seen in between the bundles of collagen. And we can observe that ground substance is less in amount. So dense regular connective tissue slide identification is regularly arranged bundles of the collagen fibers. In between there is a fibroblast cells are present. Ground substance will be less in amount. Whereas dense irregular connective tissue, there in this slide we can observe that irregularly arranged bundles of collagen fibers, and the other fibers also present like elastic and reticular. Only special stains only we can see these fibers, but collagen fibers are more prominently we can see, and few fibroblasts also we can observe, but less ground substance as like a regular connective tissue. But here the difference is the irregularly arranged bundles of collagen fibers we can see. So next slide is that adipose tissue. It is a specialized connective tissue that stores the fat and consists of adipocytes, also known as fat cells. There are two types of adipose tissue present, yellow adipose tissue and brown adipose tissue. The first image it is showing the yellow, where adipocytes are unilocular, nucleus is the flat and peripherally located, and cytoplasm is the empty and only thin rim will be present. It is present in the superficial fascia, yellow bone marrow and surrounding the viscera, and its function is insulation and protection. So whereas the second image it is showing that brown adipose tissue. There you can see that adipocytes are multilocular, nucleus, round peripheral, and cytoplasm is foamy appearance. It located in the newborn, in back, scapular region and in adults. It helps in the thermogenesis. So yellow or the yellow adipose tissue, the cytoplasm of cell appears a thin rim around that fat, and the nucleus is flat, lies eccentrically. It gives rise a signet ring appearance. So a warm-blooded mammal like whale, it can survive in very cold water because of it has very thick layer of the subcutaneous fat. This is the slide of the adipose connective tissue. Here we can identify by that presence of fat cells, and that cells appear empty as the fat in them get dissolved during the preparation of the section, and it gives honeycomb appearance. The cytoplasm of each cell seen as a pink rim, the nucleus flat and lies at the one side, eccentrically present. So this is the slide of adipose tissue and microscopic identification points. So this is the revision of the slide. So connective tissue, they divided into connective tissue proper and specialized connective tissue. Under the proper connective tissue, embryonic connective tissue, adult connective tissue. Under the embryonic, we have that mesenchyme and mucous connective tissue. In the adult connective tissue, there is a loose connective or areolar. Number 2 is the dense connective tissue. Under the dense, again two types, dense regular, dense irregular. Whereas specialized connective tissue is the cartilage, bone, blood and adipose tissue. So now coming to applied histology of the connective tissue. Number 1 is the edema. So there is an accumulation of excessive fluid in the body leading to swelling, and that we can observe in the parts of the human body rich in loose areolar tissue. So edema is the pathological process. It results in increased volume of tissue fluid, and we can see it is where the loose areolar tissue is present, and that is responsive to localized pressure. Then we call it is pitting edema. Next is the adipose tumors. So these adipose tumors are the benign or malignant, whereas unilocular, that is the white adipocytes, can generate very common benign tumor called lipomas. Whereas liposarcomas, this is the most common malignant adipose tumor, and these are most frequently located in the leg and retroperitoneal tissues. Next is the osteogenesis imperfecta. So here in this image you can observe the normal bone and osteogenesis imperfecta bone. It is a disease of the bone due to the mutation of the genes coding of the collagen fibers. So when collagen is not properly formed, bones are weak and break easily. So it is one of the characteristic feature of this disease. So thanks for listening.